Shalom, shalom, mishpocha! Welcome to another edition of Torah Tidbits. Today, the Torah Tidbits is a double portion this year. We're going to go over Torah Tidbits number 27 and 28 all at the same time. And it covers Torah portions called Tetzera, which means delivery, and Metzora, which means the leper. Now, this Torah portion deals with Tuma. Not like, Kindergarten Cop, where Arnold Schwarzenegger goes, "It's not a tuma," but it's pronounced the same way. Tuma means ritual impurity, and Tahora means ritual purity. The laws of Za'ara, which is childbirth and purification, having to deal with women, and the laws of Za'aretz, which means leprosy and various other skin afflictions, and the beginnings of the laws of Metzora, which is various afflictions of inanimate objects, such as clothing, housing, building materials, etc. Chapter 14 deals with the ritual response and restoration of a home that has been afflicted with Za'aretz, which is leprosy. Now, leprosy, that's the way it's translated in English, but Za'aretz doesn't specifically mean leprosy as we know of leprosy today. Leprosy today we know as an affliction that afflicts the nervous system to where people cannot feel pain anymore, and therefore they injure their limbs and lose their limbs because they don't realize they've even hurt it. In many countries where people have leprosy, they're actually hired to reach into boiling vats of water to get potatoes that have been boiling. They can't feel a thing, and they have third-degree burns and blisters, but yet they can do this because they don't feel any pain. And a lot of times these limbs will get infected and will have to be amputated. But Za'aretz in the Hebrew can mean anything from leprosy to any affliction of the skin. Now, in Hebraic thought and in Judaism, Za'aretz is a spiritual malady that manifests itself in a physical form. And it's usually attributed to what's called Lashon Hara, which means an evil tongue. It could be anything from slander or gossip. One of the famous stories in the Torah is when Miriam, Moshe's sister, talks bad about him, and she gets leprosy, and she has to go outside the camp. It's said that because she talked bad about Moshe, that's how she got leprosy. Now, chapter 15 deals with discharges of the body of all kinds and the purification process. See, the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, is a priestly manual on how to sacrifice and how to deal with issues of uncleanness. Forgot to mention that this Torah portion covers Leviticus or Vayikra, chapter 12, all the way to chapter 15. Now, before medical science knew about bloodborne pathogens, infections, transmittable diseases, things like that, Yahweh already knew about this. So he made precautions and put it in his Torah on how to keep a community from spreading epidemics and spreading diseases through the rituals of being clean and unclean and things like that. If somebody was found to be unclean, they had to separate themselves from the community for a week, be re-examined by the priests, and then take a mikvah, and then they were clean again. And so that is how Israel didn't get all these diseases. There's a passage in the Torah that says if you follow Yahweh's commands, you will get none of the diseases that was afflicted upon Egypt. And the three main killers of Egyptians were heart disease and diabetes and cancer, all coming from food, but also we can also add to that other diseases that are transmitted through exchange of bodily fluids such as blood or urine or semen or saliva or what have you. And see, God already knew about this. Now, before I go on, let me make this perfectly clear. If I could speak in bold type with exclamation points, that's what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to get a little closer to the camera and basically tell you there is no sin in being unclean. Being unclean is not a sin. Now, why did I say that? Because for some reason we get this idea that being clean or unclean is sin and not sin. But you know what? Being unclean is perfectly human. It's perfectly natural. If I go to the restroom and urinate all over myself, I become unclean. I have to take a shower. I have to remove the urine, because who knows what, maybe that I have an infection that I don't know about. And, urinating is one way to rid yourselves of toxins and impurities. And if I urinate on myself, I become unclean. That doesn't mean that I've sinned. It just means that I'm unclean and I better wash myself. And it's no surprise and it's no coincidence that after somebody has been declared clean by the Levitical priest, that they had to take a mikvah, which means being immersed in water, which is sort of like taking a bath or taking a shower. Then they can go back into the community again. Now, the Levitical priest had a dual role. They were not only priests, which expounded on the Torah, but they were also doctors as well. And in paganism, we can see that paganism has taken the example from Torah and from the Hebrew people, in that there's a thing as witch doctors. They're priests, spouting their own spirituality and religion, but they're also doctors where they deal with demonic possessions and diseases and sicknesses and all this kind of stuff. So that is a perversion of what the Levitical priesthood is all about. So now in Yeshua's time, being unclean meant simply that you couldn't go to the temple and participate in the rituals and the services at the temple. That's all that meant. Even Yeshua became unclean at one point, but yet this uncleanness didn't hinder him from ministering. The woman that had the issue of blood reached out and touched the seat of his garments, making his clothes, making him unclean. But yet he still healed the woman, and we know that Yeshua was the sinless Messiah. He kept the Torah perfectly. So this proves that being unclean or being in a state of uncleanness is a natural occurring phenomena, and it has nothing to do with sin whatsoever. So hopefully I've cleared up any confusion about sin and uncleanness and things like that. So even though Yeshua came in contact with an unclean woman, she was still healed of her uncleanness, this discharge, this issue of blood that couldn't be stopped. Now, the Brit Chadasha doesn't say or record this, but maybe we see that after he goes to the house of the Nasi of synagogue and raises his daughter from the dead. So his uncleanness had nothing to do with his spiritual power or being sinless or being in a state of sin or not sin or whatever. Had nothing to do with that. Now, the Brit Chadasha doesn't say, but most likely because Yeshua was a Torah observant Jew, he probably took a mikvah after all that was said and done, because that was prescribed if you ever became in a state of uncleanness. Even walking across a grave made you unclean. Now, in the diaspora, we have no standing temple, we have no Levitical priesthood, so we really don't have to worry about too much about being clean and unclean. And because of all the wars that were fought, across our countries, you never know when you're actually stepping on a grave, like an Indian burial mound, perhaps. So, clean and unclean has nothing to do with sin. So hopefully that cleared that up. Now, interesting, well, I already mentioned that, about how sometimes that sin can manifest itself in a physical form. A lot of times, if your conscience is not seared, a lot of times when you sin, it can manifest itself in a physical form. Back then it was leprosy. Thank God it's not leprosy today. But wait a minute, it is a little bit of leprosy, because leprosy could be any skin affliction. Now, I know when somebody is stressed over or convicted over a sin, and they're having wrestling with their conscience about it, what happens? Sometimes a cold sore pops up. Now, a cold sore is a skin affliction. It could be considered za'aretz, leprosy, according to Hebraic standards. So sometimes it physically manifests itself in that way. Other people get stomach aches, have diarrhea because of the nerves, the bundle of nerves that their body has become because wrestling over this wrong that they did, the sin that they committed, because they're lying or holding a lie because they spoke bad about somebody and feel bad about it. They haven't confessed it. They haven't taken care of the problem. Therefore, it physically manifests itself in such a way. So, when you sin, don't let it come to a cold sore or diarrhea or a stomach ache or what have you, or headaches. Confess your sin. Go to the person. Get things cleared up. Ask for forgiveness. Repent. Make things right. Hopefully you learned something new today from this Torah portion. You got something out of it. Hopefully when you read it for yourself, you get much, much more out of what I was able to tell you. So, shalom and shavua tov mishpocha. Love you. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.